be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the streets of gold. We'll be dancing in the streets, dancing at his feet, dancing in the New Jerusalem. And we will sing Kadosh, Kadosh to the Lord of hosts, joining in the angels' choir, and forever we will be.
Well, welcome to the next chapter on this Thursday morning. We are so glad that you've joined us. And let me tell you, we have an exciting show with a really special guest. So you need to go ahead and call your neighbors, call your friends, share this, like this, and let everybody know they need to tune in, because this is information you need to know, especially if you have children or grandchildren, or you know of children anywhere. And just watch the show. That's all I got to say. Who am I? My name is Sandi Craig, and I am your host for this edition of this time slot, the next chapter. And I am glad that you joined us, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My husband and I pastor a congregation here in Amarillo, Texas, named Life of Worship. And we meet, of course, on Shabbat on Saturday. And we have our tour portion at 2 p.m. Central. And we are live on Zoom on that. And you can always drop us an email and let us know you want to join us. And then our regular services are at 5 p.m. Central. And those are live on YouTube. But not this week. This week, we have a special conference, a Greater Exodus conference, the 7 Unknown Stops with Eddie and Tammy Johnson. And that will start sharply at 2 p.m. Central. So everything else is sort of moved around. And you don't want to miss it. It's already set up. You can go there and you can wait, or you can get it up. Just look around. Go to our YouTube, Life of Worship Amarillo, or type in John and Sandi Craig Amarillo. You'll get there. Go to our site and be sure that you are ready for that conference, because it is going to, it's going to be great. And what else? My husband and I, we do the War Room on Monday mornings at 7:30 a.m. Central. And then my husband hosts, or a lot of times I host, Let Us Reason Together on this 8:45 a.m. Central time slot as well. And then we have Walking in Spirit and Truth, our 8 p.m. broadcast right here on the Messianic Lamb Network, which you need to be a part of. Hey, everything in this network is going to build you up, encourage you, inform you, and get you ready to face whatever you have to face outside the doors and inside the doors, actually. So it's important that you go to our Messianic Lamb Network page and explore what you could be missing. Because if you're not there, you're missing it. That's what I'm telling you. Anyway, I don't do this alone. I have co-hosts with me, and I want Miss G.I. Joe, the Hebrew from Toledo, Ohio, to join me right now. Hello, Joe. She is the host of Thursday War Room Prayers, but she's on the shows all around the network too. So you're not just going to see her one time a week. You're going to see her all week long. That's all I got to say about that. So, did you want to say anything? Muted.
Sherry, it's contagious. I was just going to say shalom and good morning. It's good to be here, and it's a blessing.
So you had the mute button.
I muted myself, yeah.
I think it should be called, we should name it as something, because we all deal with it.
The mask.
No. We'll figure out something else. Well, we're waiting and thinking about what we should call this syndrome that we deal with on this network. Let's go ahead and introduce Miss Sherry Flannigan from Ashland, Mississippi, host of his great name, the Thursday War Room, the next chapter. And by the way, Joe is a host of the next chapter too, obviously. And she does our monthly conferences. So hello, Miss Sherry.
Hello, everyone.
So how are you this day?
Well, trying to thaw out. Even my little cat is hugged up against the heater, but it's not really that cold. That's what's so bad. It's a damp cold.
It's a damp cold. Well,
yeah,
we haven't had damp air in so long. I mean, we've had some snow, but other than that little bit of snow here and there, it's been months since it's rained. We need a good rain. We need rain.
We're 28 degrees and we're in a freeze and a fog and all that Ohio things that's come from Canada.
Well, yuck. I hope it's not coming this way, but in all likelihood it is. Right now, we are 31, but let me tell you guys, this week, it's been getting up to 69, 70 degrees all week long. It's been amazing. Amazing. So I'm sorry that you guys are dealing with the super cold. Well, it's not super cold, a little bit cold.
It's normal here.
I like Sherry's suggestion of the gag order. That's pretty cool. The gag order's been on. Okay. All right. The last but not least co-host of this, I would definitely say not least, is flashing back and forth, though he's not flashing, but his face is flashing. It's Mr. Mark David Smith, the producer of this show, the founder, the visionary, the one who keeps the network going, the website creator, the audio video creator and extraordinaire. Oh, that's what it needs to be. Extraordinaire. Mr. Mark David Smith. ...
All those things, all those adjectives and ... Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? It's nice out. We're going to go ahead and go down the ocean, take a swim here as soon as the show's over with. It's really nice outside, and the water is real nice and warm, and all. So we're going to go lay out in the sun today, on our beach chairs. Probably going to have to bring the beach umbrella with us today because it is pretty hot out. So no, it's 45 degrees. I love saying that, though.
Hey, that's spring in Ohio.
I love saying. Well, there are days when you guys get it really bad, but and we're cool. But there's days, Anyway, how's everybody doing?
We're doing good. We're excited for the show ahead, and I know that you have somebody special you want to introduce to us.
I do, yeah, okay. We'll go along with that. We're going to bring a new friend of mine in, Larry Sigary. I'm pronouncing your last name right. I think that's probably the first time I've said it out loud.
My two names rhyme. It's Larry Sigary.
Sigary. Larry Sigary.
Yes.
Okay. Because I probably heard Tova say it as Sigary. But hey, we all know Tova, so
that's that Georgia accent.
all of us know Tova, so it doesn't make any difference. Larry Sigary. Well, that's pretty cool. What a way to go through life. Well, Larry and I just met last Thanksgiving. He lives close by and yet so far away. And everybody on the Lamb Network knows who Tova Ratzon is, and Tova lives in our area and introduced us to Larry and his wife. And everybody knows Mark Smith is a networker, so we get to talk and find out Larry's got some background here that would be real interesting in the Lamb Network. So it didn't take long for Mark to go, "Oh, really?" Larry, let's see, where can we fit you in? And so anyway, Larry, from what I understand, we'll let him say more about it a little bit later. He's gonna enter in with our conversations today, and we're gonna kind of steer some of the things like our news segment and our main segment and everything kind of towards his background so that he can enter in with us. And we're real interested in his 42 years as being a middle school history teacher. And I'm gonna tell you what, of all the different areas you could teach and age range and stuff like that, the second he told me, my mind went to going, wow, in the public school system. And anyway, you're also an advocate of homeschooling, right?
Yes.
And so which is unique. I mean, not everybody thinks along those lines or agrees along those lines. So, Larry, let me introduce Sandy up in that corner there, over there, and then Joe, and then Sherry. Look at that! I did pretty good.
Look how good you did that.
Everything's backwards here whenever you go to pointing. So if you think you're pointing one way, you're actually pointing the other. But and I'm ex post facto today, and so I'm different every day. And anyway, so Larry's going to enter in with us. We're just going to go ahead and go along with the show. And Larry's going to be a part of the show with us today. So thank you, Larry, for joining.
Thank you, Larry, for joining us. I am so glad that you're here. I'm excited for your input. But Mark, I think you have something special you want to play and let us know about.
Oh, yeah. We're having a party.
Party.
Oh, yeah. We're having a party this Saturday night. I guess Hanukkah starts on Friday. Let me look here.
Doesn't it start tonight?
Well, tonight is Friday.
That's right.
Yeah.
What?
Starts tonight.
Tonight begins the
first.
Remember, tonight begins the day.
And you're not ready.
Oh, yeah, because we're all those messianic freaks, aren't we? And so the day actually starts at sunset. So, all right, whatever. I've only been doing this for 27 years. I'm still acclimating to this. Everything starts at sunset. But okay, it starts tonight, I guess. Daryl told me anyway. Daryl is throwing a party, everybody, and he wants everybody to come. We're going to broadcast it on here on the network. It is already in the queue, so you'll be able to see. And he's hosting the whole thing, and we're gonna have any of the lamb producers that want to come on here on StreamYard where we broadcast and actually be a part of the broadcast. We're going to do that too. So here's a little promo I put together. So, Sandy, I had to put a party on dudes in there. And by the way, I saw the new Bill and Ted adventure movie that has come out. And if you guys are Bill and Ted advocates, you like the first two movies, let me tell you what, the third one is the best of all three.
It's the bomb, huh?
You would not think that usually in series movies, usually they don't get that much better. This one was the best of all. Very, very well done. And Bill and Ted as middle-aged guys with kids is a whole new adventure. But I highly recommend it. It's very family friendly, very good. So I recommend this new one. But party on, dudes.
Totally tubular, man.
I've never seen any Bill and Ted movie.
Well, we assumed that, Sandy.
I figured you did. So.
You have to watch.
I put that comment out there about BYOD, bring your own donuts.
Yeah, there you go.
I want to hear what Larry was about to
on private chat, and I was on the world internet. Everybody now knows to bring your own donuts.
All right. Larry, what were you going to say?
Larry,
I was just going to ask, do you have to know the first two movies in order to understand the third one?
You don't, because they really kind of go over that part and they superimpose like George Carlin, who was the original guy of getting them everywhere, is a part of this. The person that brings them back and forth is Rufus. George Carlin played Rufus. It was his name, and it's Rufus's daughter that takes them everywhere. And so, yeah, it's no, you don't have to watch first two, but first two are fun too. So,
Okay.
You mean Rufus is not in it this time?
well, George Carlin did. But,
I know. Well, they could have.
well,
somehow.
they did. He's briefly in the beginning of it. They bring
Okay,
back
then I'll
a
watch it.
section of the show. Yeah, I know George Carlin was great. Anyway. But yeah, I highly recommend.
And you get an education on history if you watch.
You do, and even this one's real similar to the first one, and doing what they did, where they went through history and brought back people from history and brought them to the present day. And so,
But
yeah,
is it true history? There you have it.
there you go.
Oh, that's
All right.
we're not getting into that yet.
Movie review. There you go. So yeah, we're good.
All right.
It's all
Well,
yours, Sandy.
we're going to go ahead and have a homeschool segment today, and we're going to see where
no,
it leads.
No, we're not. No.
No?
Oh, unless you're.
I'm doing,
you-
remember, we talked about this. Yes, we are.
Oh, you scared me.
It's your homeschool segment. I
Yeah.
get it. Okay.
Yeah.
All
yeah.
right. Well, good. All right. We got it. Sorry, my mistake, because I saw Joe's note that says no homeschool segment today. So,
But remember what we
No, I
talked
was
about.
asking
Rico.
Sandy.
I
was
thought
asking
your
Sandy.
deal was the news segment.
No, I've got both.
Okay. So, homeschool, here it comes.
Well, welcome to our homeschool segment. I wanted to do things a little differently today because I wanted to talk about some homeschool victories, 3 noteworthy court victories that have made homeschooling stronger. Because, here at the network, we're advocates of homeschooling. So let's just go through them a little bit to walk it out, because these things can affect you and how you take care of your children, if not now, in the future, and can also help remind you how to fight those that would try to come in and tell you otherwise. So what are they? The first one is the Sotheby case, which actually began about 2018 when Virginia's Franklin County School Board adopted a homeschool policy that even though school boards have no legal authority to regulate homeschooling, they got into it. The policy required parents to submit birth certificates and proof of residence of their homeschooled children, even though Virginia doesn't require either of those things. So Kirk and Kristen Sotheby, who were homeschooled themselves and now homeschooling their own children, actually objected to these extra legal requirements, and the school board threatened truancy proceedings on them. Well, in April, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association lawyer and homeschool graduate himself, Peter Kamakawawuli, I have no idea how to say his name, presented arguments to the Supreme Court by conference due to COVID. And Peter asserted that the board's policy violated state law. Not only had the board arrogated to itself the power to amend state status, but it had threatened to treat the law-abiding Sotheby's as lawbreakers. And in June of 2020, the court unanimously agreed with us, declaring the school board's policies were illegal and unenforceable. So the Sotheby decision already helped defend homeschooling in other states just by that decision. That's why you need to know, because last month, the Maine Department of Education was messing with the family as well. And there was a lawsuit filed, and because of this, they looked back at the lawsuit and they backed off. So when somebody comes and says, hey, we require this of you and this of you, when it's not normal or it's not in the state law, you have grounds to fight that. And while the Sotheby case revolved around homeschooling, the next case we're going to talk about is the Curry case, which focused on the rights of families to be secure in the place where most homeschoolers homeschool, their own homes. Holly Kurz was reported to the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services when she briefly left her children unattended in the family van to go buy a box of muffins. When a child abuse investigator and sheriff's deputy showed up at her door the next day and threatened to remove her 6 children unless they allowed the officials to enter her home, Holly saw no choice but to step aside. By the way, folks, don't do that. The officials then strip searched the 6 children. Yeah. And HSLDA sued CHFS for this violation of homeschooling families' 4th and 14th Amendment rights. And in October, a federal judge said a jury could conclude that the defendants clearly violated the 4th Amendment. The judge actually wrote, Act 1, an attentive and loving mother gets muffins for her children. Act 2, there's a knock on her door and a threat by the government to take away her children. Act 3, her children are strip searched without cause. America's founding generation may never imagined a cabinet for health and family services, but they knew their fair share of unwelcome constables, and they added a 4th Amendment to our Constitution to protect against this 3-act tragedy. Wow. You know, that's pretty strong language there. But our third case now, we're going to look at one more case. And it was resolved in October when a Texas Court of Appeals ruled that a judge had wrongly issued a court order requiring a homeschool family to allow a search of their home. The State Department of Children and Family had received a report that Matthew and Tabitha Berryman had put their infant in a closet to sleep, and the baby had cried excessively. So a DCF investigator spoke to Tabitha on the front porch of the family's home, where the investigator was able to see that the baby in question was healthy and safe. Tabitha further explained that the baby slept in a walk-in closet that had been converted into a nursery. That should have ended the matter, but it didn't. When the Berrymans declined to let the investigator into their home without a court order, she went to a judge and got one. So immediately, HSLDA had to work fast. They filed a writ of mandamus with the appeals court, arguing that the order of entry was unjustified, along with the emergency motion to put the order on hold while the court considered the arguments. The appellate court granted emergency motion and ordered DSF investigation to stand down and explain why she had requested the order. This is what they said. It's not uncommon for a parent to place a baby on the floor to play or nap in a unanimous decision. And it's certainly not beyond the realm of reasonableness that a parent might convert a closet into a nursery, albeit a small one. While the state may legitimately interfere with family autonomy to protect children from genuine abuse and neglect, its responsibility to protect children from abusive parents does not authorize the state to oversee the internal affairs of every family. So that's 3 wins. And there was another one in Vermont recently, too, that had to do with procedure and things, too. We don't have time for that. But guys, I like what Joe said last week. Whether it's concerning homeschool or anything else, do not let the government or the people into your home, period. Don't do it. Don't let them have access. And anyway, I want you guys to be aware that people do fight the system. And there's precedents that have been set that if we are knowledgeable, we can refer to those. We may need people to help. If it's homeschooling, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association is a great place to go if you are having to fight for homeschooling rights and situations. But you've got to stand up for your rights and say no. Don't allow the powers that be to run over you because you're lacking in your knowledge of the Constitution. And for that, I refer you to the Constitution show that we have here on this network so that you get informed.
Yeah, and the Homeschool Legal Defense is a good website to go to if you do not know your homeschool laws. Go there, because we had a situation here in Lucas County when I was back in the day, I was homeschooling, where the Lucas County Board of Education supervisor, we have to send paperwork in here in Ohio stating we're homeschooling. He sent a paper back to us stating, I give you permission. And us homeschoolers said, no, we called homeschool legal defense. We said, this man is saying he gives us permission. There's nothing in the bylaws or the laws of the state stating that. We want it to just say, yes, we acknowledge that you're homeschooling. You do not give us permission. You do not have the authority to give us permission. And again, guys, do not let anybody into your home, because if you do, you have lost your rights in your own home. You do not, so many people do not even know. There's people out there that don't even know about homeschooling, what homeschooling is about. And when you say that you've homeschooled your child, they get fearful and think, oh, your child is caged up at home and they're not getting socialization and you're keeping them in the house away from the whole world. Well, guess what? More homeschoolers are more sociable than most public school kids that I have seen in my lifetime. And this is something that we need to stand up, and homeschoolers need to unify, especially homeschoolers that are believers.
Right.
Homeschoolers are all also not prone to peer pressure, because they've not at such a young age been subject to the pecking order of this person or that person. And they actually interact on a more mature level. But all these cases that you mentioned, Sandy, comes back to the fact that if you don't know what the law says, if you don't know what's going on, they will take advantage of your ignorance.
Absolutely.
And that happens in more places than just homeschooling. You know, we had a friend that, well, I'm not going to go into it, but anyway, it had to do, it was, I mean, they ended up letting them go because their mama went down there and she'd worked at the courthouse and she said, this is what the law says. Now, I'm not some ignorant person that doesn't know. And they came in and said, let them go. And it was just, they had not charged them with anything, but they had detained them. And they hadn't done anything that was wrong. So they will take advantage. And the big thing of it is, and I hear this from my son all the time, if you ever get stopped, don't say a word, because they say anything you say can and will be used against you. And that means they cut out a little snippet here and a little snippet there to make their point. But they can lie to you, but you can't lie to them. So it's all one-sided. You just really have to watch your P's and Q's.
Yeah.
Well, let me respond to all of this here. First of all, it's a wide statement to say don't ever say anything. You should always answer their questions, but you should always answer them as brief as possible. In other words, if you can give a yes or a no and answer their questions with yes or no, or if they ask you a question that requires more, just give at the least point you can. The second you don't answer anything, you're going to piss that guy off, and it's going to be 10 times worse than whatever it was. So you got to talk to them. You just got to be. Go ahead, Sandy.
The lawyers we've been using say do not, because they're already PO'd at you, because they will manipulate it. When they've targeted you, they already can. You're not guilty. You're not innocent until proven guilty anymore in this society. You're guilty until they can manipulate the system to prove that you are really, really guilty, even though you're innocent. And so they say, because of the manipulation and how they twist and shake things, they say don't answer a thing they say. Shut your mouth. But that again is a different perspective. Maybe that's just around here in Texas. I don't know.
It depends on the circumstances as well. I have my son-in-law is a trooper, state trooper, and he'll tell you it depends on the circumstances of the situation. If we're pulling you over for something and it doesn't look like that the guy is in a bad mood or something, yeah, go ahead, answer the questions and everything. But if you see that the officer looks like he's a little bit pissy, because some of these officers have had a bad day and they take it out on you, then you got to kind of take it by the situation. You got to be careful with the situation. Each cop is different.
Roadblocks where they look at your insurances. I don't mind doing that, and I have to show my carry permit. I have a funny story about that, but anyway, that was you have to show that because they know immediately whether you have one or not. If you don't, you're suspect. But if they want to just search your car just for whatever they want, no, they have to have reasonable cause. So, it's like, I'm glad you said that, Mark, because I didn't mean that as a blanket statement to everyone.
Yeah, that's
it depends on the circumstances. You're exactly
yes.
right. Yeah.
Let me just tell you, and we're going to address a couple of things on the Constitution here because you brought it up and you mentioned it, and I'm going to take that to the next level. But first of all, let me tell you, in every single state and in every community, if you don't cooperate with authorities, you have just broken the law right there. Okay, cooperate doesn't mean you have to give your life story to them. But once again, you're on the side, you're the defense side, you are the one that can control the situation if you want to. That's why I say always give a yes and no answer. At least cooperate to the point where you don't cause it to go even worse and make it, a worse situation than what it is. But yeah, if you don't at least give them a yes and no answer, then you can be arrested for not cooperating with them. But the second you answer yes or no, I'm going to go to the next one. You mentioned the writ of mandamus. Okay. The writ, it's interesting. Thank you very much for giving a promotion for contemplating the Constitution, because just yesterday the entire show was on the writ of habeas corpus, which works with the writ of mandamus. Does anybody know what a writ of mandamus is? You mentioned it in your little spiel there.
I read it.
Yeah, that's right. And also, does anybody know what the writ of habeas corpus is? And if you don't, you need to go listen to the show yesterday because it involves you today. And it will involve you in the future by everything that's happening, out these windows here. First of all, writ of mandamus gives you the right to stop proceedings, legally stop whatever they're doing outside the court and inside the court. All you have to do is say, if something is happening that's wrong, all you have to do is say writ of mandamus, period. And it should stop them right there, because that is the same as you're being arrested and say, I want a lawyer. It's saying exactly the same thing. Because when you say writ of mandamus, then that means I want to stop all proceedings right now until I get somebody with me that has legal authority to tell me what can happen. And they should have to stop. So the writ of habeas corpus is once you are, and Sherry used the word detain. Once you are detained, arrested, however you want to put it, you can say writ of habeas corpus. Writ of habeas corpus means you have to, I don't care if it's 3:00 in the morning, you can say writ of habeas corpus and they have got to stop everything. And as soon as they can get a judge and get a court open, they have to prove why they prove it. They have the arresting officer or any officer has to prove why you have been detained, and they have to give that proof. They say, well, we can hold you for 24 hours. That's the biggest bunch of BS there is, because they have to be able to prove while they are holding you for 24 hours. And it's called a writ of habeas corpus. But the problem is that us dumbos out here, we don't know this stuff. See, but so there's two things that are actually in the Constitution right there. We're talking about, I'm going to just tell you, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 2, writ of habeas corpus will stop everything. And writ of mandamus will stop. So what you were talking about, Sandy, brings out a really good point. But there are a lot of things out there that are for your favor, and their constitutional rights that we just don't know because we don't know our Constitution. And you know who else doesn't know the Constitution? Is the police officers,
It's true.
the judges,
And the lawmakers.
all the lawmakers are supposed to. Actually, I put out, and Abigail and I actually brought up the fact that I think in the same way that the kings of Israel were supposed to write out an entire Torah because they're the king of Israel, I think that every person from in office, from judge to the president, should have to write out the Constitution in handwriting and make it public so everybody can see that they wrote it out and they know what it says. That's my point. So, Larry,
Yeah.
how would you like to enter into this discussion?
Well,
Anything you could bring is vital to us, brother.
first of all, there's very little information about what goes on in the courts against homeschooling. I mean, teachers have no idea what goes on. Teachers' attitudes towards homeschooling are, that's another person taken out of my classroom. And if enough of them leave, there's my job security. So it's always about that. And
so they're going to be instantly negative towards it.
Definitely, yeah. Against charter schools, that's the biggest thing that I heard all the time from the administration, that those evil charter schools are taking more kids away from us. That's more funds away from us. And what are they doing with that money? You know, before I was in the public schools, last 22 years I was in public schools. I taught 7 years in a Christian school. So I'm aware of the different curriculums that are out there. And when homeschoolers came to me when I was in the public school, we were able to cooperate because I knew the curriculums. In North Carolina, they have to take a EOG, an end of grade test every year. So the homeschoolers would show up at the end of the year when the rest of the students that I taught were taking the EOGs, they would come and take it too. And they would always score higher than most of my kids. And I attributed that to the curriculum and to the dedication of the parents. So that's why I'm positive toward charter schools. I'm positive toward homeschooling too, because I see the results. And the public school classroom has changed over the last 22 years, let alone the 42 years that I've been in education. And it's not been positive. It's been negative.
What are some of the negative things that you've seen?
Examples, if you can think of any. Right.
Well, simply the turnaround of what is being, who has the power in the classroom. I mean, the administration, and I don't know whether this is negative or positive, the administration will back up a parent's complaint, and the teacher's always kind of walking on eggs what they're doing. And what that leads to is the strict adherence to the curriculum that is given to us. And there is no leeway. And the curriculums that have been coming down have been changed also. The most recent, in the spring of this year, I was given a survey upon the new social studies curriculum that's coming out. And one of the things that's been added is gender studies to the social study curriculum.
Yeah.
And when I read that, it was like,
wow.
In middle school age kids, give me a break. And so, you know, I was negative on that survey, but that's what's coming down the line. And if the new teachers want to keep their job, they have to teach that. Uh-huh. And there's no leeway.
Teach it, not just bring it up and talk about it in one class. Yes. It's literally taught the LGBT, the gender gender, whatever it is actually taught.
Right.
I will say this, Larry, to what you said about the parents have more rights than the teachers and et cetera, et cetera. In the school system, my sister is a middle school math teacher, and she says the same thing. She said that the system will back the parents, and you know, she's been punched by a kid before.
Mm-hmm.
And things like, now she is a former Army person who did Desert Storm, so she's intimidating. She can be, but she says the very same things, and she hates it. Of course, we know that the Muslim Brotherhood is in charge of a lot of the textbooks that are coming out and curriculum that's coming out, which is really, really bad. Right. Really, why are we doing that? But she says she doesn't even, she hates teaching in the system.
Mm-hmm.
She abhors her job. And she said because it's so crooked, and she sees where it's going, not only with teachers via parents, via the administration, but in even what they're having to teach. Like you said, the kids, what needs to, you're teaching to a test. You're not actually teaching. The kids are leaving without skills, et cetera, because the teacher's hands are tied.
And here's a dirty little secret too. The EOGs are not necessarily geared to evaluate the student. They're there to evaluate the student, the teacher. I'm sorry. Our being rehired depends upon our test scores. So it puts the teacher in the point where they are absolutely teaching the test. Because if your kids don't come back with good grades at the EOG, they'll get passed on. I mean, that's a lie that's been promulgated for 15 years, that if you don't pass the EOG, you're not going to, they get passed on. But the teacher is reprimanded and put on a special program in order to improve their teaching. I did not necessarily stay to the curriculum. As a result, my test scores weren't always the greatest. And a 40-year teacher, was on the brink of being put on one of these programs because I was not teaching what they wanted to be taught.
Wow.
So you're saying it's almost like being a factory worker.
Yes.
Kind of attitude. That's pretty sad. One of my questions is with social studies, over the years, have you seen a change where the history has been removed? Like when I was a kid in the 80s, they had civics class in high school, and the civics class pretty much was, they taught us about the presidents and they taught us how to vote. They never taught us about the Constitution or the amendments or anything of that sort. Do you see that when you were over the years, how that's changed?
I did not teach high school social studies.
Right, just the junior high social studies. Did you see anything that was removed for the historical aspect of kids not getting that information that they need when they get to the adult stage?
Well, let me explain this. Social studies has been put on the back burner for the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. Math and language arts is the big push because that's what the EOGs are in. Okay. So social studies teachers per se are not being hired. What you have in the public school system is a language arts teacher or a math teacher who also teaches social studies.
Wow.
They have not been trained in social studies, but because of the quote lack of funds, because of the schools shrinking in population, they're not hiring new teachers. They're just giving new assignments to teachers. So you have a math teacher who also has to teach a couple courses in social studies. So what do? They depend upon the curriculum.
The book, yeah.
They depend upon the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
They don't bring anything else in. They don't have time to. And that's the biggest story. I was the only social studies teacher in my entire county that was trained to be a social studies teacher. All the rest of the schools had, and you teach social studies.
Sherry.
A couple of comments kind of going back when you first started. You were talking about how much they're paid for each student through the government and everything. We had a situation in the family years ago, a couple of our cousins, and one cousin, the younger cousin, they were like a year apart. The younger cousin had done everything but junior and senior English, and he wanted to take junior and senior English together, and he could go ahead and graduate. He'd already passed enough on the PSATs or whatever the numbers are, SATs, that he could already get into college. And they refused to let him take both of those together. And so he said, I'm not spending another whole year in school over one subject. And he just dropped out of school, took his GED, went on with his brother to the university, and he's a doctor of polymer chemistry.
Wow.
The reason that they gave him for not allowing him to do that was because they would lose what they paid for him. They had to have so many kids.
Mm-hmm.
That was it wasn't what was best for him.
Right.
It was a whole issue. And then we had another, going back to the LBGT, the alphabet people. I call them the alphabet people. A friend of mine's little girls in kindergarten, and they went to something for the kids, they were putting on, had the all kindergarten, and they kept looking at this. They're going like, and so they said, who is that over there? And the little girl looked at him and said, well, she used to be a girl, but now she's a boy. She's a he.
Right.
And I said, really? In kindergarten?
In kindergarten, yeah.
She's going like, what? That is, now you talk about taking kids out of homes. Them's the people that needs to have their kids taken away.
Yeah. Right.
Well,
I
exactly
want to
the parents.
Right.
And, the other thing that I wanted to bring up was I've looked at my granddaughter is hugely intelligent, and she's in the school system. And they have what they call bell ringers, and they have to read this stuff, and then they have to read a book and do a book report. And I said, let me see the book you're looking at, because she's acing everything. It was the most dumbed down book I've ever seen, and the subject matter was ridiculous. And she's like, whatever. And I'm going like, you need to be reading this. Here, let's read it, because we've read to her ever since she's a baby. And she's like, yeah, Grammy, I know. She said, it's just, there's no prose in it. There's no real nice structure. The stuff that they give them is ridiculous. And I'm going like, this will make your brain mush. Here, that one. And then the last point I was going to make was history, about changing history. They have changed history. They have changed history about the reason the Civil War was fought. The reason the Civil War was fought was not over slavery. That was a side issue. They had and I'm not for slavery. Don't get me wrong. Don't anybody start sending a lot of letters to Mark about me just because I'm in the southern states. We know why it was fought, and it was over economics. It was over cotton. It was industry. They had all the cotton mills up north, and they wanted to pay us nothing for our cotton. So we decided to send it over to England. That had a lot to do with it. And it was really over states' rights, which is part of the Constitution. It was really over states' rights. Slavery was a side issue, and they wanted to do that to break the back of the South, because all of our labor was slave labor. Like I said, I'm not for slavery. I'm glad it was ended. Okay. But they need to set the history books right. We've got letters talking about the cotton and everything in our family. So a lot of the roots in history, they have changed to meet their agenda today.
Yes. And that's across the board. It's good points. Good point, Sherry. Well, we're going to continue this conversation, but we're going to start off with this and then continue, because we're going to go with this thread. So just stay tuned for the news. I wanted to just present an article with this theme that we've been following for the last week and this week. In schools, it says schools are brainwashing kids to hate America through ethnic studies curricula by Alex Newman. School lessons teaching vitriolic hatred of America, Christianity, and the traditional family, individual liberty, and more are spreading across the country like a deadly cancer. And like cancer, the result will be suffering and death, in particular, death of sanity and civilization among other victims. Under the guise of fighting whiteness, government schools from California to North Carolina and everywhere in between are subjecting the captive children in their care to so-called ethnic studies programs. And these ideological and political brainwashing schemes bring to mind communist re-education programs, critics say. As part of the ethnic studies curricula, children are given classroom instruction on how race, class, gender, sexuality, and citizenship status are tools of oppression, power, and privilege. That's explained by John Morosky in a piece for Real Clear Investigations, blowing the lid off the newest Marxist indoctrination programs to hit the U.S. schools. And during the lessons, Morosky continued, the children are taught colonialism, state violence, racism, intergenerational trauma, heteropatriarchy, and other real and imagined evils are linked together by a common thread: whiteness. And so society must be radically transformed along Soviet lines to deal with it. Of course, all this idiotic to the max, but because children today no longer receive even the basic training in logic and real history, most California kids cannot even read. They have no way of realizing that they are being manipulated and duped. And that's not only kids, most Californians, it says, cannot even read, and they are being manipulated and duped. Instead, the children are unwittingly being weaponized to bring down America, liberty, the church, the family, and even civilization itself, literally. Some of the examples of what passes for ethnic studies can blow your mind, and they show clearly the agenda to use American children to break down society and institutions. Children are ordered to create and organize a systemated campaign for social justice. Here are their options: to protest or leafletting. The high school students are supposed to teach middle school children about all of it. The environmentalist charter schools in LA, meanwhile, force students to write a breakup letter, will break up with some form of oppression. Their options are toxic masculinity, heteronormativity, the Eurocentric curriculum, and the Dakota Access Pipeline. Those are just a few examples of things they have to write about. And as part of the ethnic studies, government schools all across the state are also teaching impressionable young children to write political manifestos, including a list of demands. One expert, California Policy Center President Will Swaim, said the scheme basically turns American exceptionalism upside down, painting America as exceptionally evil. It is remindful of re-education camps of Vietnam or China, he said. And this is from the guy himself. It's indoctrination rather than education. And interestingly, even leading tax-funded advocates of the subversion openly proclaim their goals. They don't hide it. Here's one quote: "I oftentimes think of ethnic studies as radical social action." It said Association for Ethnic Studies boss Julia Jordan Zachary, chair of the Department of African Studies at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. She went on to say, "It is education and knowledge that's produced to influence social change." With states across the country considering mandatory ethnic studies indoctrination of all children, it's past time for God-fearing patriotic citizens to recognize that the public school system is a threat, not just to children, but to American liberty. It is now a national security issue. That is some of the things our kids are facing. And we look, y'all can join me, come back in, but we look at the generation that's risen up, that has really been, that are really left. I'm not even talking liberal, I'm talking left, that are 30 down, really. And we see so much of that generation and the generation underneath it are so leftist, because this is what they're hearing, not only in the schools, but in colleges as well. So our kids are being brainwashed, and this is what we are producing. And you look outside and you see the effects of it, especially this year.
Sandy, I'd like to get Larry's take on this. Larry and I had talked about one of the reasons that I especially wanted to bring him in is because for the past few years here in North Carolina, the school that he's taught at is more of a rural type middle school and not like in a big city or anything. And he was expressing to me that the majority of the kids in the school were Black. And so a lot of the things that you were just talking about, I'd like to hear if Larry has anything to say, about that. How did things work? I mean, I couldn't conceive of that. All the schools back, I graduated in 1972. I mean, we had Blacks in the school, but they were such an extreme small minority that I just don't even know how to ask the question. So based on what she's talking about, how curriculums will kind of geared towards whites is what I heard in that. Would you like to respond to that, Larry? And how it went at the schools that you were at there, where it was dominantly Black.
The curriculums that Sandy are talking about are being pushed by the teacher unions. In North Carolina, we do not have a teacher union. We have an association, and they act primarily just like unions, but they don't force like the rest of the unions do. As a teacher in North Carolina, I am a government employee, and it's illegal to have a union for government employees. With that said, though, the rural counties, the rural teachers, I would say the majority of the rural teachers come from the actual area that they teach in. And the majority of them are Christian. I think Sandy was talking about from the age of 30 down. That's where the danger is coming in, because these people have been educated in that system that has changed all these things. The agenda is in there in the history courses. The agenda is in there in even the readings in language arts. So I would challenge everybody that's listening to pray for those Christian teachers in the rural areas, because they're having to deal with this, and they have choices to make, whether they follow the curriculum or they continue to teach as they've taught all along. I decided as a teacher to continue teaching the stuff that I've been teaching for the last 30, 40 years. Whereas I've had under my wing new teachers that are Christian, and they don't realize what they're teaching is not necessarily what God wants them to reveal to the kids. And it takes the mature teachers like me to open their eyes to it. So I would challenge everybody to be praying for those teachers that are still in public schools that are Christian, that their eyes be open to what's going on, and that they take a stand against it. And I know job security is involved with it, but you can still get things across to your administration in the rural areas, because again, the rural areas, the majority of administrators and teachers are from that area there, and it's heavily influenced by the churches.
Well, now, Larry, you're from Cleveland, Ohio?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, say hi to Joe, who is in Toledo. We call her Holy Toledo. And so what do you see as the difference of when you were teaching in Ohio than what it is down here in North Carolina? And how long have you been here in North Carolina?
I've been in North Carolina for 30 years now.
Yeah. So
I taught up north in a private school in Cleveland for 12 years. So I was not involved with the public schools there.
Okay, I get it.
Have you, go ahead.
Go ahead, say it. No, go. You go.
Have you noticed for yourself the change? Even I know you said that they don't even have social studies teachers anymore, but have you seen the flip yourself in the textbooks and the inaccurate information that's now in there?
Definitely, yeah. And I've been on several textbook choosing committees, and I've made sure that my voice was heard in some of these things. Because again, you have teachers that are put on those committees that don't know history or social studies, and yet they're choosing it based upon what the textbook company is offering in terms of online things and all the perks and stuff like that. They don't go for necessarily the content area. So I have definitely seen that. I would add to that I've seen a lot of textbook companies that have changed based upon being textbook companies for the South, knowing that we're in the Bible Belt. They have done a lot more in the last 20 years on discussing Israel as part of history, when before 20, 30 years ago, Israel was never spoken of in textbooks at all. The Phoenicians were talked about, but not Israel. And I've always thought that the Phoenicians and Israel were a combination there in the history department. But textbooks are trying to do that. Yeah. But again, the curriculum is being, the textbooks are being driven by those teacher unions. And y'all saw what the teacher unions were demanding in California in order to open schools again. And that's unfortunately across the board. Any group of people, National Education Association, that's what they're driving for.
Can you say that? Can you tell us what they're driving for, so we can just state it again for the program?
Well, basically what you said was going on.
The ethnic studies and things like that.
The ethnic studies and the gender studies. Mm-hmm. I've not seen the whiteness criteria going on, because that's relatively new. That'll probably be coming out in the new textbooks. Textbooks are renewed every 5 years. So,
well, you can definitely see the whiteness agenda in every day on the news in our society. I mean, when you remove the statues, when you remove the history, because of every white man that was part of history, what have you just done? You're rewriting history.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the 1619 project that was put out by the New York Times, that's been floating around for, I think, 2 or 3 years now. And, you know, if you're a hip social studies teacher, you want to do the hip things, and that's what's in. But
I'll give a little heads up. The central element of the 1619 project is the claim that anti-Black racism, slavery, systemic oppression, and other evils are embedded in the very DNA of America. And of course, the DNA is evil, and there can be no change in policy and no possible transformation that would make the nation redeemable. Right. That's what that says.
Yeah. As a teacher, you know, going through what you went through, you know, educating children. Let's say I'm a mother of a child that still goes to public school. Is there anything any advice you could give to me to keep an eye on what my child what I should be looking for to help my child not get entrapped into this situation? If you understand my question.
Yeah, I understand. I watched one of the previous sessions, and one of the sessions was talking about, or I picked up this somewhere, that somebody was talking with people that were under communist rule for a long time, and what they were doing with their kids when they came home from school was to sit down and talk with the kids about what they had learned that day, and to put their 2 cents in and straighten things out. And I suggest that you do that. As a parent, get in communication with your teacher and find out, what was their religious background? What school did they go to? How they feel about things, because the curriculum in the colleges now are being turned around also, and that's where the kids are coming from. So anybody below 30 years old as a teacher, you need to check them out very carefully, and get involved definitely with the homework. Some teachers try to hide it by not giving any homework, and you need to talk with your student about what's going on in the classroom.
I had a couple of questions for you, Larry. As a teacher, if you're a teacher, how do you go against the curriculum and teach the truth? Or like you said, a mature teacher teaching the others, how would you encourage or teach the teacher to go against the grain?
Well, everybody knows that the curriculum is a gigantic thing. I mean, if you're having to teach history from the beginning of time to 1415, you can't cover everything. So I tell the student teachers and the new teachers, pick out what you're comfortable with and emphasize that, and give it the right slant. There was a time for like 10 years in which the big push in education was not to have a textbook as your Bible, let's say. Okay, don't use the textbook, bring in other things. And I try to explain that to the teachers, that's the way to do it. Bring in other things, because there's lots of stuff now. That's one of the good things about the internet. There's lots of pro-Christian, pro-God formats out there that you can bring into the classroom. You don't have to stick with that textbook. Don't make it your Bible, because you'll end up having to explain that, and you're not capable of doing that when you have a bad slant on it.
Very good. Mark.
Well, Sherry had a quick question. Sherry, go first, then I'm going to probably finish this off here.
I think it was Texas that had a problem with some online textbooks that some of the parents just happened to be there or something when they saw what was being taught, which was totally against actually what the Texas law said. How much of because like we look at our kids' textbooks to see what are you learning? What is that? Tell me, what do you think about this or whatever? And but this was a textbook that they didn't allow to go home. How much of a slant, or how much of that have you seen or know of that's been going on? Like they have a textbook only at school.
Again, the excuse is finances. You can only afford so many textbooks. So you only have one, and that was the situation for the last 15 years in my classroom. I only had one set of textbooks. They're left in the classroom. Kids don't have to take them home and get them damaged and brought back and have to pay for the damages and stuff like that. But I can see where that is being used as a close off the parent from knowing what's going on. And I didn't do that because I didn't use textbooks that much. I brought in other stuff, but I can see where it's being used like that. And that's why parents need to talk with their students, their children, about what's going on in the classroom. What's your assignment about? And most teachers have no problem explaining what's going on. I've had quite a few what I would consider annoying parents that want to know exactly what's going on. And it's like they wanted me to give them my lesson plans and stuff like that. And
Wow.
I had to explain to them, and I did it nicely, but, grumbled about it. But, that's what parents ought to be doing. We've had a lot of students that come from charter schools that they're no longer happy with the charter schools because they don't have sports and stuff like that, where our middle school had sports. So they would cut them off at the time when they could come to sports and come to our school. And those parents were really involved. These were the ones that would ask me for my lesson plans and stuff like that. So
I probably would have been one of those. I know.
one of those annoying parents.
Yeah, I would have been. Yeah.
Children can't defend themselves at a certain age unless you teach them, how to think,
Yeah.
how to research things out, which is all part of life. So that's actually a life skill.
Exactly.
But that was, so the teachers want an authority. They're going to believe what they tell them, and then they go home and talk to somebody in higher authority like mom and dad or grandmother. And it's like, no, this is reality. And I had a friend that went to university. She said the Lord was sending her there, and she thought it was just to get an education, but it was to educate others. And she actually stood up in one of the classes and told the professor, "Why are you corrupting these young minds? I'm old. I've lived a lot of life, and that is not true."
Mm-hmm.
Called in the dean's office, but she didn't care. She said, "I know better." So
didn't they make a movie out of that? Oh, no. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sherry. What?
No, I said I should make a movie on her.
Yeah, really. Okay. Joe usually brings our homeschooling segment, and Sandy likes to usurp her every once in a while. But I got to change the intro there because Sandy, you've done a couple of them, and I like it when you bring that because you always enter new stuff in there. And Joe does too. And one of the times that Joe did the homeschooling segment and brought news into it was earlier on this year when everything was changing and they actually started the quarantine, and then everything changed in the school system. And one thing that Joe brought out that really kind of switched my mind, I hadn't thought of before, was there's a difference between someone who homeschools and someone who schools at home. And when they had to start switching it to the teachers, and everything went online, went virtual, that type of thing. First of all, I don't know if you had to do that or not because I don't know. But you understand what I'm saying is that I guess my question's more along the lines of would you consider teachers that teach in school to be good homeschooling teachers? In other words, it's a completely different, it's a whole different format. It's a whole different thing. And now that they've gone to a lot of schools doing virtual school, you have more of teachers schooling at home instead of homeschooling. You see what I'm saying? Do you understand my question? So what do you think of that format, what they're doing and how that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Oh.
I'm asking you, what do you think based on, the teachers having to do the virtual school and everything now? Did you have to do that at the end of the last school year?
At the end of the last school year, we had to do the programmed computer-based, but we didn't have to do live stuff.
Okay, I see.
We're doing the last couple months that I spent this year, all the teachers were doing live stuff. And they had some kids in the classroom at the same time that they were doing live stuff. So all the kids were on that computer. And
but what do you think of the virtual then, I guess is my question. In other words, where the kids are at home, they're on the computer and the teacher is on like Zoom or whatever, that type of thing, versus actually being in class. What's your take on it?
I don't see any difference in it, except that it's like a captured audience. You don't have to have any classroom management skills other than checking out whether the kid's paying attention.
Okay. Okay.
And the students, I don't know. I think it's a negative thing because the students really don't have to pay attention. Like while you were asking that question, I was reading the little blurbs on the side here from Bob Hall and Tammy Wesley and stuff like that. And I wouldn't mention, that's why I asked, are you asking me? So that goes on in the virtual classrooms all the time too.
I see. Okay. Interesting. Anybody else want to expound on that question or anything?
I just know that having a teacher piped into your house is not homeschooling.
No.
Homeschooling is very hands-on. The reason, I homeschooled for most of my son's education. I've told them, Larry, I put him back in, he was in private school through second grade. And then I homeschooled, and in junior high, in the first year of high school, I put him back in. He tested when he went in. They tested him as a junior in college is what he tested out. By the time he was in ninth grade back in that private school, he tested grade level. I pulled him out and finished homeschooling.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he went in and went ahead and he's done 4 years of college, et cetera. He ministers and things like that. And there's a whole bunch more of that. We're not getting into that right now, but,
yeah, the closest thing that I can say homeschooling is private tutoring that I do.
yeah, that's good.
One-on-one, you can have instant feedback and you can really get to know the kid also, which, as a parent, you should get to know your son or daughter.
My sister wants to do that. The one that I said is a junior high math teacher. She said if there was a way to get out and do that, I would leave the public school system in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sherry, one quick thing.
My granddaughter does the distance learning, and I was asking my daughter about it, and she said, well, she loves sitting in her beanbag with her laptop learning. But the teacher in her English class has already expressed sadness that she's not actually in the class at school because she can add so much.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that kind of difference in that with them, so that it's got good points and bad points. And she also loves that she doesn't have to go to study hall. She can roam around the house or do whatever she wants. So, and she's healthier, actually. She's just healthier this year. She hadn't been sick at all. And I think last year she missed like 30 days or something. So she still keeps her grades up. So it's not an issue. And she always has her doctor's excuses. But so there's good points and bad points to all that. But one of them is, the participation. You can participate more if you're physically in the class than you can online, because sometimes she can't get the teacher's attention, and she doesn't like that because she likes class participation.
I just wanted to say thank you, Larry. You really informed us with a lot of things on your side of the coin, so to speak. And again, guys, government school, if they give you a computer, and I've stated this before, you've brought the government into your house, and that can lose your freedom in your own home, because they can see what's going on. Like y'all can see my background. You can see whoever doesn't have a green screen. So be careful.
I noticed you took the guns off the wall back there, Joe. So
yeah, I did, including my AR-15.
Water guns, Joe. They were just water guns. They just looked
my
real.
bazooka gun was back there. Right? But thank you, Larry, because there's so much, and I have some other questions that because I think
we could do a whole other show.
Yeah, because I have some questions I wrote down about, he does social studies. What exactly does that mean? But that's something for another day.
Yeah.
And this was really good. This was informative. And again, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Larry. Guys, Mark, for finding Larry, for coming in and blessing us. We really appreciate this.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, you're quite welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we
Well-
really enjoyed the information that you shared from a been there, done that position and exactly what's going on. It's really informative.
Yeah.
I would love
us to handle things more in our own homes.
You know what I would love? I'd love to have Larry on, and then my sister who's still in the middle school at the same time, and have them come. I think that we should plan that. That would be really amazing show to have them give us that perspective from both sides, one still in, one out, both believers and messianic and things like that, and how they handle it. And also North Carolina versus Texas. And I don't know, that's a thought, isn't it, guys?
That would be really great. I think that would be really great, because there's people out there that are in this walk that still are having their children go into the public school system because they're unable to homeschool, because there are circumstances.
Oh, definitely is.
I believe that you can homeschool your child, but I understand that people each have their different circumstances, and we need to bring the truth out there and let them know. And that, Sandi, I say kudos. Let's do it.
We have to wait till the Christmas break, so she's off.
Hey, I just got one question. Larry, are you sure you're not in the same house as Sherry? Because the walls and the ceiling looking real similar to each other. I'm not really certain the same.
I'm in the next room.
Oh, okay. I was going to say it.
Sherry, hand him a glass of water. He needs one.
No, I need to know where the bathroom is.
All right, guys.
Left.
Well, this isn't the end of this conversation. I think we're going to plan something soon upcoming, and you need to be informed, and you please like this show. Please press like, share it, and spread it, because this information, if you know of any kids, even if they're not your own, you need to be aware of this.
Yeah.
And you need to go to Contemplating the Constitution and watch every show.
Yeah.
Binge watch it. Here you go. Well, your mind might be a little, okay, watch one a day and take notes. So,
That's good. Yeah.
anyway,
Thank
you for joining us today. We are so happy that you have come and been with us on the next chapter. Until next time, we say shalom.
Shalom.
Ta-ta.
Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
We'll be dancing in the street.